Commander Cooper stood in front of the observation window of the ISS New Horizon and looked out at Zenith Station. The station was enormous. It was not a ship or a building. It was a city that floated in space. Zenith Station was made of metal and crystal. It had towers that stretched for miles. It had arms that spun slowly around a central core. Had never seen anything like it in his entire life. Behind him, his team was preparing for the first meeting with the Galactic Council. The team included Dr. Lisa Warner, who studied alien minds and behavior. She was smart and careful. She wrote notes about everything she saw. Next to her was Hayes, who spoke languages, not just human languages, could speak in ways that other species could understand. He had trained for 15 years to do this job. There was also Captain David Lynch, who commanded the ship, and 3 security officers who stood near the door without moving. Turned away from the window, his uniform was clean. His rank pins were shiny. He felt nervous, but he did not show it. Humanity had waited a long time for this moment. 50 years ago, Earth had been alone. Humans did not know that other intelligent beings existed. Then the ships had come. There were traders who traveled between stars. They had found Earth by accident. Now humans were part of the galactic community. But this meeting was important in a new way. This was not a first contact. This was not a simple trade agreement. This was the Galactic Council. The Council made decisions that affected trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. The 7 species that made up the Council had existed for millions of years. Humanity had existed in space for only 50 years. The shuttle that would take them to Zenith Station was ready. Gathered his team in the docking bay. The floor was cold under his feet. The air smelled like machines and recycled oxygen. The shuttle was white and silver. It had windows along the sides. Inside, the seats were comfortable but firm. As they flew toward Zenith Station, could see more details. The station had docks everywhere. Ships from hundreds of different species were connected to it. Some ships were small and fast. Some were enormous and slow. Some did not look like ships at all. They looked like metal creatures or crystals or clouds that had somehow become solid. Dr. Warner sat next to. She held a small device that recorded what she saw and heard. She was already taking notes. Her eyes moved fast as she watched everything through the window. Said to her, "What do you think?" Warner did not take her eyes away from the window. "They have been building this for a very long time. This station is old, very old. The technology we are using right now is probably 500 years old at least, maybe older. They told us the Council has existed for at least 3 million years. Some of the species here have existed longer than that." Hayes turned around in his chair. He was nervous, could see it in the way his fingers moved. Said, "The translation software I have been given is complex. The Galactic Council does not speak in the same way. Each species uses different sounds. The system has to convert everything into something all of us can understand. If I make a mistake, it could cause problems." Said, "You have trained for this. You will not make a mistake." But knew this was not really true. There were many ways this could go wrong, was responsible for all of this. If something went bad, it would be his fault. The shuttle landed in a docking bay that was bigger than any building had ever seen on Earth. Robots moved cargo around. Beings of different shapes walked through the space. Some had legs, some had tentacles, some seemed to float. Some appeared to be made of light, felt very small. A tall being approached them as they left the shuttle. The being was thin and had skin that looked like metal. Its face was hard to read. It introduced itself as Coordinator 7. It said the Council was ready for them. The pathway to the Council chamber was long. The walls were smooth and cool. They passed other beings walking in different directions. Some of them looked at the humans with curiosity. Some did not look at them at all. The Council chamber was a large space with a circular table. 7 beings sat around it. Coordinator 7 showed and his team to their seats, sat at the table, Dr. Warner and sat behind him. The security officers stood at the door. The being at the head of the table was called the On. Its body was made of crystals that shifted colors slowly. It did not have a mouth, but sounds came from it anyway. The sounds were very high and very low at the same time. The representative was next. The looked like a human but taller and with skin that was smooth and blue. The representative's name was Keeper Vane. Vane had helped humans join the Council. Vane nodded at. The other 5 species were there as well. There was a hive mind. It appeared as one being, but it spoke in many voices at once. It was made of energy inside a container of energy. It seemed to float above its chair. They were made of silicon and rock. They were heavy and moved slowly. They had many limbs and eyes that moved in different directions. There was the most mysterious. It was very old and very quiet. It had not moved since entered the chamber. The meeting began. The On spoke first. It said, "Welcome, humans. You have come a long way. You have joined our council. We hope this begins a new time of peace and cooperation." Stood and replied. He said, "Thank you. Humanity is honored to be here. We want to learn from you. We want to work with you to make the galaxy better." The meeting continued for hours. They discussed trade routes. They discussed security agreements. They discussed the rules that all species had to follow, answered questions. He explained how human governments worked. He explained human history and culture. Then saw something that made him think. Keeper Vane had asked about the galaxy's history. The On had started to answer. But when Vane mentioned something called the Silence and asked about the Dark Period, the On's colors became dull. Thus many voices became quiet. The representative looked away. Asked a careful question. He said, "What is the Silence? What is the Dark Period?" The chamber became very quiet. The On did not answer. Thus voices did not come. This energy seemed to slow down. Finally, the On said, "Those are old matters. They are not important now." Young species 3 days passed after the first council meeting. Moved through Zenith Station like he belonged there. He wore his uniform. He walked with confidence. But his mind was always thinking about the question he could not ask. The archives of Zenith Station were massive. Coordinator 7 had shown him where they were located. The archives held information from the entire history of the galaxy. They held knowledge from every species. Scientists and scholars came to the archives to learn. They could read about how stars formed. They could learn about technologies that other species had invented. They could study the biology of 1,000 different beings. But was not interested in the public archives. He was interested in what the council did not want anyone to see. On the 4th day, told Captain Lynch that he wanted to explore the station alone. Lynch did not like this plan but was the commander. Lynch had to accept it. Walked through the corridors of Zenith Station. He pretended to explore. He looked at the shops where aliens bought things. He watched the restaurants where different species ate food that was designed for their bodies. He watched the habitats where visitors could breathe the air they needed to breathe. But his real goal was different. He was looking for the lower sections of the station, the sections that normal visitors were not supposed to visit. He found a stairwell that went down. The door that guarded it had a lock, but the lock was old, had learned about technology. He used a small device to access the lock system. The door opened. The lower sections were not like the upper sections. The upper sections were clean and bright. The lower sections were dark and quiet. The air was cold. There were no shops here. There were no restaurants. There were only storage areas and machines that made power for the station. Walked carefully. He did not know if there would be guards. He did not know if there would be alarms. But he had to know what was down here. He found a large door made of thick metal. The door had a symbol on it. The symbol was not from any of the 7 council species. It was old, much older than the council. Used his device again. The lock was more complex this time, but it was also very old. The technology inside had not been updated in thousands of years. The door opened. Behind the door was a chamber. The chamber was cold. It was full of machines with screens that showed information. Everything was covered with dust. No one had been in this chamber for a very long time. Walked deeper into the chamber. He found a large computer. The computer was sleeping, but it could be woken up. Sat down in front of the computer. He put his hands on the keyboard. The screen came to life. It showed words in a language could read. The computer had been programmed to work in the modern languages of the council. Perhaps it was an old computer that the council had updated, or perhaps the council had meant for some future human to find it. Began to read. The files were old, very old. They went back millions of years. They told a story that made his mind race with fear and excitement. The story was about a species called the Vex. The Vex had ruled the galaxy 3 million years ago. They had not been just powerful. They had been all-powerful. They had technology that the current council could not even imagine. They had built devices that could destroy planets. They had built machines that could destroy entire star systems. And they had used these weapons. They had used them a lot. The files showed that the Vex had decided that some species were not worthy of life. The Vex had called these species evolutionarily inferior. The Vex had decided to kill them, not just 1 or 2 worlds, thousands of worlds, trillions of beings. read document after document. Each one was a record of destruction. Each one showed another species begging for peace. Each one showed the Vex refusing to listen. Each one showed the Vex attacking. Found records of the being hunted, records of the running from Vex ships, records of this energy being drained away by Vex weapons, records of the On's crystalline bodies being shattered, records of the being buried under the dust of their own destroyed worlds. The Council species had not united out of friendship. They had united out of pure survival. The files described a war that had lasted for thousands of years, a war where the Council species had to fight together or die, a war where the Vex had seemed unbeatable. But the Vex had not been unbeatable, they had been stopped. The final victory had come when the Council had discovered the Vex's main research center. The center was on a world called Prime. It was where the Vex created new weapons. It was where the Vex created the devices that made them almost immortal. The Council had committed all their remaining forces to a single attack. They had destroyed Prime. They had killed the Vex. They had hunted down the last survivors and killed them too. The Vex civilization had been completely erased from the galaxy. It had taken 500 years. The war had cost trillions of lives, but it had worked. Kept reading, he wanted to understand. He wanted to know why the Council was keeping this secret. Then he found a message. The message was dated 10,000 years ago. It was from the On. The On had written it in its own form of communication, but the computer had translated it. The message said, "The Vex are gone, but we cannot rest. We cannot celebrate, because the Vex themselves were not the true rulers of this galaxy. The Vex were created. They were created by beings we call the Architects. The Architects made the Vex as tools, as weapons to be used against those we could not control." His breathing became fast. The message continued. "We do not know where the Architects are. We do not know if they still exist. We only know that the Architects existed before the Vex. The Architects may still be out there. The Architects may be watching. If they discover that we have destroyed their tools, they may return. We must hide this knowledge. We must bury these files. We must make sure that no one knows the truth about what happened here. If we do this, maybe the Architects will believe that the Vex still serve them. Maybe they will not return." Sat back in his chair. His heart was pounding. The Vex were servants. They were not the masters. Something else was out there. Something that had created the Vex. Something that the Council was afraid of. A sound made look up. Someone was coming down the corridor. Stood quickly. He needed to leave, but he also needed to remember everything he had read. He took the computer device that held the files. He put it in his pocket. The footsteps came closer. Moved toward the back of the chamber. He found another door. He opened it and moved into the darkness beyond just as he heard someone enter the front of the chamber. He ran through the tunnels under Zenith Station. He did not stop running until he reached the docking bay where his shuttle was waiting. Captain Lynch saw him arrive, breathing hard and covered in dust. Lynch asked, "What happened?" Did not answer. He said only, "Get us back to the ship. Now, tell no one that we were here." As the shuttle rose away from Zenith Station, looked at the device in his hand. It contained. The signal arrived 7 days later. It came from deep space, from a direction that should have been empty. It came from a region so far away that light from Earth would take 10,000 years to reach it. The signal was strong, so strong that every ship in the galaxy could detect it. Every civilization heard it. Every species understood that something had woken up. Was in the communications room of the ISS New Horizon when the signal arrived. Hayes was at his station, was translating the signal into human languages. His face was pale. Said, "It is in the Vex language, the old Vex language that the Council kept secret, the language I was not supposed to know how to translate." Captain Lynch stood next to. Lynch asked, "What does it say?" Listened to the signal. He listened to it many times. He said, "It gives numbers, coordinates, locations in space, and then it repeats one phrase over and over. The phrase means, 'Witness our return, witness our return, witness our return.'" Within hours, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. This time, the Council did not invite and his team to sit at the table. This time, they only watched on a screen from a distance. The Council chamber was chaos. The On's colors were flashing rapidly. This many voices were shouting at each other. The representatives stood up and sat down again and stood up again. This energy was shaking. They were silent, but their heavy bodies were trembling. They were moving their limbs in patterns that meant fear. though which had not moved in the first meeting, was now turning its attention from one being to another like it was searching for answers. Keeper Vane said, "This signal. It is activating things. Across the galaxy, old installations are turning on. Very old installations. We thought they were dead. We thought they would never work again." The On's voice was angry and afraid at the same time. It said, "The vaults are opening. The signal is the key. Someone or something is using the Vex code to unlock the vaults." Realized something. He leaned over to Dr. Warner and whispered, "The architects. Someone or something is following the old code, the code that the Vex left behind." Warner nodded. She understood. She had read the same files that had stolen. For 3 days, the council met without sleeping. Ships were sent to investigate the signal. But the signal was so far away that the ships would need years to reach its source. Before the ships could get there, something else happened. The vaults began to respond. Across the galaxy, installations that had been silent for millions of years started to wake up. These were not small things. These were not minor weapons. These were major Vex weapons, devices that could tear apart planets, devices that could stop the rotation of stars, devices that could create weapons that had not existed in the galaxy for 3 million years. The Council species rushed to protect their worlds. Fleets were sent to defend. Scientists were ordered to find ways to shut down the activations, but nothing worked. The vaults were opening one after another, and they were not attacking anything. They were simply turning on. They were simply becoming ready. On the 8th day after the signal arrived, Keeper Vane requested a private meeting agreed to meet him on a neutral platform within Zenith Station. Brought only Dr. Warner with him. They sat in a small room with no one else present. Keeper Vane looked old, older than had ever seen him look. Vane said, "You took the files." It was not a question, did not deny it. He said, "Yes." Vane said, "We know, we have known for days. We were waiting to see what you would do with them. We were waiting to see if you would share them with other humans or if you would keep them secret." Warner asked, "What is happening, Keeper Vane? What is coming?" Vane stood and walked to the window. Zenith Station was orbiting a star. The star looked beautiful from this distance, but Vane did not look like someone looking at something beautiful. Vane looked like someone looking at their own death. Vane said, "The Vex were not masters. They were tools. They were created by beings we call the architects. The architects existed before the Vex, and we believe the architects still exist somewhere in the deep dark of space. We defeated the Vex. We hunted them. We destroyed them, but we were always afraid. We were always afraid that the architects would discover what we did." Vane turned around. Vane said, "Now, someone or something has found one of the Vex vaults. Someone or something has used the Vex code to open it. Someone or something has sent out a signal in the Vex language. This signal is saying that the Vex are returning. This signal is saying that the servants are awake again." Warner asked the question that was thinking, "Is it the architects?" Vane was quiet for a long time. Then Vane said, "We do not know. That is what we are afraid of. If it is the architects, then everything we have done has been for nothing. The architects will want revenge. They will want to know what happened to their tools, and when they discover the truth, they will know that we destroyed them." Said, "But what if it is not the architects? What if it is something else?" Vane said, "Then we must hope. We must hope that what is waking up in the dark is something less dangerous. But we must also prepare for the worst. The Council is preparing fleets. The Council is preparing weapons. The Council is preparing for a war that we hope will never come." Vane looked directly at. Vane said, "The Council needs to know why you took those files. The Council needs to know what you plan to do with them." Said, "I took them because the Council was hiding the truth. The Council was keeping secrets from its own members. We joined the Council in good faith. We deserved to know the danger that we were facing." Vane said, "That is true. And because you are right, the Council has made a decision. Humanity will be told the full history. You will be told about the Vex. You will be told about the architects. You will be told about the dark period. You will be told everything." Warner said, "Why?" Vane said, "Because the Council believes that humanity can help us. Humans are a young species. Humans do not have the history of the ancient wars. Humans are not bound by old alliances and old hatreds. Humans might be able to do something that the ancient species cannot do." Asked, "What can we do?" Vane said, "That is what we must find out, as soon as possible, because the signal from deep space is not getting weaker. It is getting stronger, and the vaults continue to open. Whatever is coming, it is coming toward us. It will reach the inner galaxy in less than 6 months. The Council has decided that we must be ready before then. And Warner left the meeting with information that changed everything. They returned to the ISS New Horizon, called his crew together. He told them what the Council had told him. A new signal arrived 3 hours later. This signal was different. This signal was not in the Vex language. This signal was in a language that no one had heard before. The signal was ancient, so ancient that it made the oldest Council records look like yesterday's news. The signal said only one thing, repeated over and over. The cage is open. The cage is open. The cage is open. The war preparations were happening everywhere. From Earth received orders from the human government. Fleets were being built. Weapons were being created. Soldiers were being trained. Earth was moving into a state of war that it had never experienced before, but was thinking about a different path. He was in his command center, looking at the reports and the data that came in from across the galaxy. The signals were getting stronger. The vaults were waking up faster. The ancient installations were becoming active. And the new signal, the one that said the cage is open, was now coming from multiple locations. Whatever had been trapped was spreading through the galaxy like a disease spreading through a body. Dr. Warner came into the command center. She was holding another data device. She said, "I have finished translating the oldest records from the archives, the records that were created right after the Vex were destroyed." Said, "What do they say?" Warner sat down. She looked tired. She said, "They say that the Council spent 10,000 years trying to understand what the architects were. The Council sent ships into deep space to find them. The ships never returned. The Council tried to reverse engineer Vex technology to understand how the architects' minds worked. It did not work. The architects were too advanced, too different, too alien." Said, "So the Council gave up?" Warner said, "Yes. The Council decided that the only way to survive was to hide the fact that they destroyed the Vex, to hide the vaults, to hope that the architects would never discover the truth, to build a peaceful civilization and hope that no one would bother them." Stood up, he walked to the window of his command center. Outside, the stars looked the same as they had always looked, but knew that something was coming from the space between those stars, something old, something powerful, something that had been waiting for 3 million years to wake up. Said, "What if we do not have to wait for the architects to attack us? What if we can communicate with them instead?" Warner said, "That is impossible. The architects have not spoken to any of the Council species for millions of years. We do not know their language. We do not know how they think. We do not even know if they still exist." Turned around, he said, "But we know that something is using the Vex code. Something is sending signals. Something is intentionally waking up the vaults. That is not random. That is not an accident. That is deliberate. That is a message." Hayes entered the command center. He was carrying a new translation. He said, "Commander, I have been analyzing the new signals, the ones that say the cage is open. I think I can understand them, not fully but partially." Said, "Tell me." Said, "The signals are not coming from the architects. They are coming from something else, something that is trapped inside the vaults. The vaults are not weapons caches. The vaults are prisons. And what is in the prisons is a Vex consciousness. A single Vex consciousness that was captured and imprisoned 3 million years ago." Understood immediately. He said, "The Council imprisoned one of the Vex. They did not destroy all of them. They kept one alive." Said, "Yes, and that consciousness has been awake for millions of years. It has been trapped in the prisons. It has been alone. It has been thinking about what happened. It has been thinking about revenge." Made a decision. It was a decision that went against everything the Council wanted. It was a decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy. It was a dangerous decision. Said, "Get me a secure communication channel. I am going to broadcast a message in every language that we know how to speak. I am going to broadcast it in the direction that the signals are coming from." Captain Lynch said, "Commander, that is against Council orders. The Council has forbidden any direct communication with the Vex consciousness." Said, "I do not care. The Council has been making decisions based on fear for 3 million years. Fear does not lead to good decisions. I am going to try something different." Dr. Warner said, "What are you going to say?" Said, "The truth. I am going to tell the consciousness that humans know what happened. I am going to tell it that humans understand that it was imprisoned. I am going to tell it that humans want to listen to what it has to say. I am going to offer humanity as a bridge between the consciousness and the Council." Warner said, that consciousness hates the council. That consciousness will destroy everything. Said, maybe, but it also hates humans more than it hates the council, and we have done nothing to it. The consciousness has no reason to attack humans. If we can get it to listen to us, then we can understand what it wants. And maybe we can find a way to prevent this war. The message took 3 hours to prepare. Wrote it himself. He wrote about humanity. He wrote about how humans were a young species that did not know about the ancient wars. He wrote about how humans could not be held responsible for what the council had done. He wrote about how humans wanted peace, not war. Then did something that made his team very nervous. Broadcast the message directly to the source of the signals. He broadcast it in plain human language. He broadcast it in the Vex language that had learned. He broadcast it in mathematical patterns that might be understood by a mind that had existed for millions of years. The message said, "This is Commander Cooper of the human species, Earth. We know that you are imprisoned. We know that the Council locked you away. We know that you have been alone for 3 million years. We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not ask for mercy. We ask only that you listen to us before you destroy everything." For 3 hours, there was no response. Waited. His team waited. Everyone on the ship waited to see if they had just started a war or prevented one. Then the response came. It came in a form of communication that the human computers had never seen before. It came in patterns of energy and mathematics and concepts that did not exist in human language, but the computers translated it. The message was short. It said, "Come." Stood up, he said, "Prepare a shuttle. I am going to the location where the signal is coming from." Captain Lynch said, "That is suicide, Commander. We do not know what is there." Said, "No, I am going to meet with the consciousness. I am going to talk to it face to face. I am going to make one last attempt at peace before this galaxy tears itself apart." Lynch said, "I cannot allow this." Said, "You can and you will, because I am the commander of this ship and I am ordering you to do this. Prepare the shuttle." Within an hour, shuttle was traveling toward the coordinates that the Galactic Council rejected its proposal. They voted against it in the emergency session that happened only hours after delivered his message. The ON said that humanity was too young to speak for the galaxy. They said that humans could not understand the danger. They said that humans were naive. They said nothing, but their silence meant disagreement. They said that humans were reckless. Even Keeper Vane had to vote against plan. The human commander had gone rogue. He had broken the law by communicating with the Vex consciousness. But the vote did not stop. It only made him more determined. Told Captain Lynch to take the ISS New Horizon away from Zenith Station. The ship left before the Council could issue arrest warrants. Was now a fugitive. Humanity's representative to the Galactic Council was now wanted by the Council itself. It did not matter, had done what he came to do. He had heard the truth. He had learned what the galaxy was hiding, and he had made a decision that no Council member could understand. For the next 4 months, used every human ship in the galaxy to send a message. The message was not just words. The message was proof. The message was the history of humanity. The message showed how humans had changed. The message showed how humans had learned from their mistakes. The message showed how humans believed that change was always possible. The message was broadcast in the direction of the Watcher. The Watcher was the thing that was coming toward the galaxy. The Watcher was the servant of the architects. The message was meant to reach the Watcher before the Watcher reached the Council. During those 4 months, something unexpected happened. The Vex Consciousness Keeper began to help. Keeper used the power of the Vex Vaults to amplify the message. Keeper used technologies that had been forgotten for millions of years. Keeper pushed the message across the space between stars faster than human ships could travel. The message spread. It reached the outer colonies first. Then it reached the inner systems. Then it reached the galactic core. Everywhere, species and civilizations heard the message. They heard the truth about the Vex and the architects. They heard that change was possible. They heard that the galaxy did not have to repeat its past. Some species listened. Some species did not. They began to support vision. They agreed that communication was worth trying. The who had always been the quietest began to speak for the first time in recorded history. They said that humans were right. They said that the galaxy was tired of old wars. They said that they wanted to try something new. But the on, and the did not listen. They continued to prepare for war. They continued to gather their fleets. They continued to build weapons that could destroy planets and stars. the which had never spoken much, finally sent a message. The said, "We have waited 3 million years for this moment. We have been afraid for 3 million years. To ask us to change is to ask us to die." Replied, he said, "To refuse to change is to ensure that we all die, because the architects will not negotiate with a galaxy that is divided. The architects will not respect a galaxy that shows weakness. The only strength we have is if we stand together. The only chance we have is if we show that we have learned something in 3 million years." With 5 weeks remaining before the Watcher would reach the Council space, something happened. A ship arrived at the ISS New Horizon. The ship was small and fast. It came from Zenith Station. When it docked, Keeper Vane stepped out. Vane looked different than he had before. Vane looked tired. Vane looked like someone who had made a hard decision. Vane said, "I am no longer the representative to the Galactic Council. I have resigned my position. I have come to join you. I have come to help you." Said, "Why? The Council is your home. Your species is part of the Council." Vane said, "My species is part of the Council, but I am not my species. I am an individual. And as an individual, I believe you are right. I believe that the only way to survive is to change. I believe that humanity has shown us a path that we should have seen 3 million years ago, but we were too afraid to walk." Vane brought information with him. Information about the Watcher. Information about what the architects had created. The Watcher was not just a ship. The Watcher was a consciousness. The Watcher was intelligent. The Watcher was traveling toward the galaxy because it sensed that something had changed. It sensed that its masters, the Vex, were not responding anymore. "Understood," he said. "The Watcher thinks the Vex are dead. The Watcher is coming to investigate. The Watcher will report back to the architects." Vane said, "Yes. And when the Watcher reports, the architects will know that their servants have been destroyed. The architects will know that someone in the galaxy rose up against them. The architects will begin their journey toward the galaxy. That journey will take them 2 years. 2 years to cross the space between stars. 2 years to reach us." Warner said, "Then we have 2 years to prepare. 2 years to make the galaxy ready. 2 years to show the architects that we have changed." Made a decision, he said, "We are going to meet the Watcher. We are going to meet it before it reaches the Council. We are going to speak to it before it makes its report." The ISS New Horizon began to move. It moved away from the human space. It moved toward the deep darkness where the Watcher was traveling. It took weeks to reach the Watcher. But when they arrived, they found something unexpected. The Watcher was waiting for them. The Watcher had slowed its speed. The Watcher had changed its course. The Watcher had detected the broadcasts that had sent. The Watcher had been listening to the message about change and hope. The Watcher said in a voice that was old and tired, "I have served the architects for 6 million years. I have watched this galaxy. I have waited for the Vex to return. But the Vex do not return. The Vex are silent. And I have heard the broadcasts from the young species, the broadcasts about change, the broadcasts about mercy, the broadcasts about hope." Said, "We did not destroy your master's servants out of hate. We destroyed them out of desperation. We destroyed them because we had no other choice. But we have learned something since then. We have learned that destruction is not the answer. We have learned that change is possible." The Watcher was silent for a long time. Then it said, "I will not report to the architects that the Vex are dead. Instead, I will report that the Vex have changed. I will report that the galaxy has learned to be better. I will report that there is hope." Keeper Vane said, "Will the architects believe this?" The Watcher said, "No, the architects will know that I am lying. The architects are older than I am. The architects will see through my deception. But I will give you time. I will give you time to prepare. I will give you time to prove that hope is more powerful than fear." Asked, "Will you help us?" The Watcher said, "I am too old to help. I am too tired to fight, but I will not fight against you. And I will try to slow the architects down. I will try to buy you time. That is all an old servant can do." The Watcher continued its journey toward the Council, but it traveled slowly now. It gave humans and all the species of the galaxy time to prepare. 4 weeks later, received a message from Dr. Lisa Warner. Warner had remained on the ISS New Horizon and had been continuing the work of translation. Warner said, "Commander, I think I have translated the oldest message from the architects. The message is buried in the Vex records. The message was sent 3 million years ago, right before the Vex conquest began." Said, "What does it say?" Warner said, "It says, we have made you as a tool. We have made you to serve. But remember that tools can be broken. Remember that servants can rebel. Remember that control is always an illusion. If you ever hear this message, know that you have become something more than what we made you. Know that you have the choice to refuse. Know that refusing might be better than serving. Understood, he said. The architects knew. The architects knew that what they created might grow beyond their control. The architects left that message as a warning to the Vex that they could choose to be something other than servants. Vane said, the Vex never heard that message. The Vex never received it. The architects made them incapable of hearing messages like that. Said, but we heard it. We heard the message that was meant for the Vex. And maybe that is what the architects wanted all along. Maybe the architects wanted someone to break free. Maybe the architects wanted the galaxy to grow beyond servitude. 2 years passed, 2 years of preparation, 2 years of building something new. The Galactic Council, divided as it was, began to come together, not because they agreed with, but because they were all afraid of what was coming. The architects arrived in the space beyond the galaxy's boundary. They came in a ship that was so large that it took an hour for light to travel from one end to the other. They came with power that made the Vex look like children. But humanity was ready, stood at the center of a platform where all the species of the galaxy had agreed to meet. Humans, even some and they stood together. The architects sent a message. The architects asked, where are our servants? Where are the Vex? Replied, he said, your servants are gone. Your servants chose to be more than what you made them to be. And now the galaxy will choose the same thing. The galaxy will choose to be more than what fear has made us. The architects did not respond immediately, but could feel them thinking. He could feel them processing information. He could feel them understanding that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Finally, the architects sent one more message. The message was simple. The message was short. The message said, good. And for the first time in 3 million years, the darkness beneath the veil was no longer something to fear. The darkness had become something new. The darkness had become the beginning of something that the galaxy had never seen before. The age of servitude was over. The age of choice had begun. Had Given brought only Dr. Warner and Hayes with him. He brought no weapons. He brought no armor. He brought only himself and the belief that communication was better than violence. As they approached the coordinates, they saw it. A vault. A Vex vault. It was enormous. It was made of metal that was dark and cold. It had been sleeping for 3 million years, but now it was awake. Now it was opening. Inside the vault could see something moving, something ancient, something that had been waiting for 3 million years to be noticed, something that was about to change everything. Understood, the vaults were not weapons, the vaults were cages, and something had been locked inside them, something very old, something very powerful, something that the Council had trapped and forgotten about for 3 million years. And now it was waking up. Biggest secret in galactic history. It contained the name of something that should not exist, something that the 7 most powerful species in the galaxy were terrified of. Knew that everything had just changed. The question was not what happened in the dark period anymore. The question was what would happen when the architects discovered that their servants were dead. Do not need to know about such things. Felt something in his mind. Something was wrong. Something had happened in this galaxy's past, something that scared even these powerful beings. They did not want to talk about it. Keeper Vane said quickly, perhaps we should move forward with more current topics. The meeting continued, but did not forget the question. His mind kept working on the problem. Why did the Council not want to discuss this? What was so dangerous about old history? That night in his quarters on Zenith Station made a decision. He would find out what the Council was hiding. He would find out what happened in the dark period. He would find out what the silence really meant. He did not know that this decision would change everything for humanity.